And now joining us, Akbayan Party List Representative Shell Diokno. Congressman Diokno, good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Carmina, and everyone watching or listening.
All right. First off, I want to get your reaction first on South Korea applying the brakes or stepping on the brakes on a 28.7 billion peso loan to the Philippines, citing its potential for corruption. Akala natin tayo lang maapektuhan. Pero itong Korea, Congressman Diokno, pinipigilan na ang paggamit ng pondong galing dapat sa kanila para makatulong dito because they fear it's just going to be lost to corruption. What can you say about that?
Well, it's all the more urgent that we need to clean up everything that's happening in terms of flood control and other infrastructure projects and show the world that we are able to hold government officials and others involved accountable. That's been a problem for us for a long time now, especially when it comes to corruption cases. And this is a wake-up call. It's about time we stand up and do something about it. Government must act decisively and immediately.
Congressman, you've been there. You sat through the hearings led by the Infracom. But what has been the most glaring so far, glaring revelations to your mind, Congressman?
Well, there's been so many, it's hard to choose which ones are really stand out. But, I think we have to always be ready to see what's clearly admitted and what may be motivated by the statements of witnesses. Very clear, I believe that there are lots of anomalies in terms of ghost projects, lots of anomalies inside the DPWH that could not happen without the involvement of others, both in the government and in the private sector. Getting to the bottom of it is the challenge, especially when you have two chambers of Congress who are conducting inquiries not for prosecution or criminal punishment, but rather in aid of legislation, which is more complicated now because both members of both houses have been their names have come out as of being allegedly involved as well. That's why yesterday afternoon I was one of those who filed a bill calling for an independent commission and giving it enough teeth, enough powers to really get to the bottom of what's happening, know the complete truth, and prosecute the people and punish them, everyone involved.
We're going to talk about that in a bit because, there are reservations as well as we talk about this independent commission, given what we're seeing right now. But you said something very interesting just a few seconds back, Congressman Diokno, and you said the people, in so many words, have to be ready to see what is clearly stated and what is clearly motivated. What are the motivations that you're seeing on the floor, Congressman Diokno, as you listen to all the revelations being thrown?
Given my background as a trial lawyer, I'm used to witnesses and having to evaluate and assess their credibility. And one of the things that I always ask myself when I'm listening to witnesses' testimonies are, why are they saying what they're saying? Do they have their own agenda? Do they have their own motivations? Are they trying to protect themselves or other people? And especially when we speak of billions of people's money being used in a way that is really, abhorrent, of course, you're going to have to take every witness's statement with a grain of salt. We must be able to really evaluate how credible they are, not just from the words that come out of their mouth, because we can be assured that they will be saying things that they want us to hear. We have to also determine, and that's why an independent commission is so important, are there corroborating evidence that we can use to say that this person is telling the truth and the whole truth and not being selective either? From what I've heard of the witnesses, my impression is that, yes, there are things they're saying that are true. The bigger challenge is sifting that and deciding what else or how complete is the story that they're giving.
But Congressman, is it only just about the testimonies being given by the witnesses, or are you also looking into the motivation of your colleagues? You're a new member of the chamber, you're a new member of the House. Are you also sort of looking into the motivation as well of your colleagues and the questions that they're asking from these resource persons, these witnesses?
Well, we're looking at everything. When I conduct this kind of evaluation, I look at the documents, I look at whoever else is getting involved. In fact, one of the reasons why I filed the motion, which was carried by the Infracom for full disclosure of all the members of the committees, is because that's expressly required by our rules, that no one who has a direct or indirect pecuniary business or financial interest in what's being investigated can participate in the deliberations or vote when the committee reaches that stage.
Level with us, Congressman Diokdo. Do you find some of the questions being raised there sort of suspect as well? Because the fear of many, and I'm sure you know this, is that it's now become sort of the House versus the Senate, kanya-kanyang pasabog, kanya-kanyang listahan. But is there something that tells you as well na kanya-kanya ding pagsalba at pagsalag ang nangyayari?
Kaya nga ang sinusulong na namin na Carmina ay isang independent commission so that we can be sure that the questions being asked of anyone who appears there are not motivated by any personal or political agendas, but rather are precisely for the purpose of getting at the truth, and not just selectively, but the entire story, what really happened.
I want to get your take on the behavior and, the demeanor of Curlee Discaya yesterday. What stands out the most as you listen to him speak?
When you have a witness like that who has a lot of stake in terms of their own personal, individual, criminal liability, then you have to really be sure that you don't accept what they're saying hook, line, and sinker. One of the things that stood out when he was being questioned by Congresswoman De Lima, which I then followed up later when I had the chance to question him, was his statement that, I didn't understand some parts of my affidavit kasi po Bisaya ako. Mm-hmm. But when I've done, of course, we all do our background work on witnesses like that. And when I heard him say that, immediately when I had the chance, I questioned him because I knew that he was very fluent in Filipino or Tagalog, and he did admit it when I questioned him, because eventually he was forced to say that he had been living in Pasig for more than 25 years. You can't live in Metro Manila without understanding a simple phrase like alin doon, and these are just indicators of how truthful witnesses are.
What about Bryce Hernandez, JP Mendoza, and the other engineer that went there as well when they presented, the screenshots allegedly pertaining to, showing the piles of money first, and also the conversation, the text messages between Senator Joel Villanueva, this is what they're claiming, and Alcantara. What did you notice about these characters?
Well, first of all, of course, seeing those pictures of all that money really has a lot of shock value, and that tends to also color how we evaluate the testimonies of witnesses. Whenever I am asked to evaluate, for example, a whistleblower's testimony, actually it takes hours upon hours of questioning, takes hours and hours of investigation into their background, into other evidence that may either show that they're lying or telling the truth, and also figuring out how much of what they know are they really revealing. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
And that applies to all witnesses, not just Mr. Hernandez.
But do you believe what Bryce Hernandez said yesterday, especially when he linked two senators, Joel Villanueva and Jingoy Estrada?
for me to answer that question, I would have to sit down with him on a one-on-one, or in a small room where I could convince myself that I know that he's telling the truth and the whole truth and nothing but. Hearing him testify in a public meeting like the one we had yesterday, a public hearing, that will give us some indication. But I would have to really dig much deeper. It's probably my background as a lawyer, because in the 36 years that I've been practicing, I've heard witnesses, I've seen witnesses, some of them lying through their teeth, some of them being selective in saying what they know, and some of them being very open and forthright about everything that is within their knowledge. One other thing that I think we have to emphasize to the public is when witnesses say they know something, we have to first really listen carefully. Do they know it because of their personal knowledge or because somebody told it to them? And I heard statements not just from Mr. Hernandez but from others that would appear to indicate that, even from Mr. Discaya, that they had been told this information. In other words, they didn't know it of their personal knowledge. And that is also a factor when we assess their credibility.
Two other names were mentioned yesterday, although in a very different light. You had Curlee Discaya readily saying that he had has no personal knowledge, no personal transaction with the Speaker of the House, Speaker Martin Romualdez, and Congressman Sal Dico, and he wasn't challenged. Did you find that suspect? Did you find the Infracom lacking in any way by not even challenging that statement of Mr. Discaya, Congressman Diokno?
For me, just hearing him say that immediately was a red flag to me that, okay, now he reveals this. He didn't appear to say that when he testified in the Senate. And how much else of what he's claiming in his affidavit is also based on what was told to him. And to me, whoever witness we're talking about, whether we speak of Mr. Discaya or others, that is really part of the equation when we assess their truthfulness and their credibility. In fact, perhaps it would be good if those who are chairing Senate and House investigations remind the witnesses and are fully aware all the time that what we're looking for are facts based on personal knowledge and not what was told to them.
Is there anyone that has appeared before the committee, Congressman Diokno, that you find credible enough to listen to?
I think there are grains of truth in every witness who has testified. The biggest challenge really is to determine, are they being selective? Are they telling us the whole truth? If not, why and what are they hiding? In my experience, witnesses tend not to tell everything they know, sometimes maybe because they don't think it's relevant, but often because they have their own personal agenda. They may be afraid to reveal certain things. They may be afraid of reprisal. They may not want others to know certain things for various psychological reasons. And these are things that all factor into how we look at their testimony.
Which brings us to the bill that you filed, having the importance now of having that independent commission. But already there are concerns, Congressman, as you know. How powerful will this commission be? Will it have prosecutorial powers? Who's going to compose this independent commission? Based on the bill that you filed, what should be there? To make sure that this is not only independent, but a credible commission, Congressman?
Well, the bill that we filed does not give the commission itself prosecutorial powers, but rather it gives the commission the power to conduct a full, comprehensive investigation, to even provide immunity, what we call use immunity, if that is appropriate under the circumstances. To assist in providing the witnesses with witness protection, if again that is appropriate under the circumstances, to compel the production of documents and witnesses, and then after a full and thorough investigation, to refer the matters for prosecution to the appropriate prosecutorial agencies of government. We don't want to double the the officers that will be involved in the prosecution. I think that we have enough officers both within the executive department.
Congressman? Okay, we have back on the line Congressman Shell Diokno. Congressman, apologize for that. You were saying about this independent commission. First of all, is this the bill that you filed yesterday?
I'm sorry, Carmina, I cannot hear you. Something, maybe there's a problem with the signal, but I couldn't hear you your last question.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the bill that you filed seeking to the creation of an independent commission, is this going to be separate and distinct from the independent commission that the president himself is forming?
Well, we hope that the president will conform with the bill that we are filing, because we believe that it would we would be able to give it more teeth if the commission were to come from Congress. There were issues even in previous commissions whether they would be able to do what they set out to do if it were purely an executive body or created by the executive department. With the backing of Congress and the powers that Congress has, I think that would be a much better commission that would have all the powers it needs to get to the bottom of this.
Who should comprise, based on your bill, if there's any clause pertaining to it, who should be members of the commission and who should choose the members of the commission?
Well, the members of the commission, of course, must come from sectors that are familiar and have the capacity to assess and evaluate the evidence and as well make proper recommendations. So our bill includes, of course, former or retired members of the court, the Supreme Court, experts, engineers or others in that field who would be able to assess the specifications and the different information that they would need, because that would be highly technical, as well as members from civil society and others who could also be in a position to look at the evidence from an objective point of view. So we don't want anyone there who would have a potential conflict of interest or anyone that people could say would be favoring either members of the executive or legislative departments or even private contractors or others from the private sector.
So no members, no politician.
Yes, I don't think that the commission would benefit from having politicians involved in its investigation.
All right. Now, as you know, there's an investigation being headed by the Infracom there at the House of Representatives. There's also an investigation being headed by the Blue Ribbon Committee at the Senate. When this independent commission sees the light of day, should the separate investigations continue? Because, Congressman Diokno, this is what they've been saying, that this is an aid of legislation, what both houses of Congress are doing in terms of investigating the flood control controversy. So if the independent commission sees the light of day and these two decide to stop, then why did they begin in the first place? Because can they really just stop midway and say, okay, we can't think of any legislation here anymore?
Well, there are a lot of possible legislation that could come out of this. But if an independent commission is established, then I think it would be most prudent and in the best interest of both chambers to at least defer their investigation and to wait for the commission to come up with its findings. Because if it's legislation we're talking about, they can draw from the findings of the independent commission, and from there, if ever they would need to do some additional inquiries, can do that after.
But then what we're seeing right now is sort of, yes, it's transparent, right? But it's mudslinging all around. So if you have an independent commission, do you have it in your bill as well as to how this can be as transparent as possible? without, of course, causing unnecessary noise, so that the public themselves may discern for themselves what the truth really is.
You know, you're right. You really hit the nail on the head. There's so much mudslinging going around. You have one hearing in the Senate where names are thrown about, and the next day hearings in the House where names from the other chamber are thrown about. And that's precisely why we need an independent commission. That commission must hold hearings that are accessible to the public and should be totally transparent both in its processes and in its findings and recommendations.
All right, we're going to have to leave it at that. We've run out of time. Congressman Shel Diokno there joining us this noon. Thanks again. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much.